What's going on, Washington fans? Welcome to Bleacher Report. I'm Josh Taylor. As you can tell, if you've watched me on here before, I'm not with my usual setup. This is life on the road for the holidays. I've traveled to Virginia to spend Thanksgiving with the family, and then I will be at the Tennessee Titans and Washington Commanders game on Sunday. So I wanted to give y'all a preview and just some things that you really need to watch for and why this game is actually a really tricky matchup in a couple different ways. I think Tennessee is one of these really weird teams that you might not watch a lot of. You don't really hear too much about him, but they're actually doing a lot more than you realize. So this matchup is no means like we thought the Sunday game against the Cowboys was going to be some cakewalk. And then we were rudely awakened. That was supposed to be the Sunday game where it's like, all right, we're going to beat our rivals. They're banged up. They're hurt. But this is our get right game and get right back on track with the Washington Commanders team that's really been struggling. You know, obviously dropping the last 3 games, starting 7-2. This has been less than ideal with the stretch of the Steelers, the Eagles, and then the Cowboys, and really waiting on that bye week to come in week 14 after this game. But Washington loses 3 straight coming into here. The Tennessee Titans are 3-8, but coming off of a big win against the Texans really surprised the heck out of me and made C.J. Stroud look pretty bad. C.J.'s had a little bit of a sophomore slump, so far this season, but the second year. But the Titans did a good job and really surprising with a defense that's been banged up a lot this year. So I wanted to bring that up and talk about this team because Washington is 5.5-point favorites right now. I think the total points as of right now, brought to you by DraftKings, is 44.5, which I think that is a pretty good line. I feel bad for the betting folks of the game last week, as it was not many points scored until that fourth quarter is one of those ones to really stress about. And then they just blew the doors wide open. Crazy ending. We can only hope that this game is not like that. But guys, buckle up. This Titans team, just looking at the numbers and everything that they've gone through this season and watching a couple of their games, they really surprised me. You wouldn't guess how good their defense has been, but they've been extremely underrated. They've allowed the fewest passing yards per game in the entire NFL with 169.6 passing yards per game. 169. Like I said, they roughed up C.J. Stroud last week, made him look bad, rattled him a good bit. But 169 yards per game this far in the season is crazy. That was one thing that I was not prepared for at all because there's a couple other things where you look at the numbers and you're like, that doesn't make sense. But they also have the 8th best rushing defense with only 106 rushing yards per game allowed. But this is the catch here. They give up the 6th most points per game with 26.4. So you're like, how is that possible? They have the best passing defense. They have the 8th best rushing defense. They don't allow a lot of yards. They're actually second in the nation or in the NFL with yards allowed per game. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. How do they allow so many points? And it comes down to their offense. Their offense is really bad. Led by Will Levis, who is turnover worthy. I noticed one thing just going back and looking at their last few games, and it's just been that their defense, like I said, fighting through adversity, doing a good job, but the offense has struggled all season long. Kind of sounds like Washington over these last few games. And I'm going to talk about Washington's side of things, but I think it's great to identify the Tennessee Titans team and really what Washington's getting their hands on. And then obviously we had a couple things come out today with practice, and the injury report should be officially released here in a minute. So I'm keeping my eyes on that as well. But we've got some updates that I'll talk to you all about on the second half of this stream. But their offense is terrible. Flat out, it's not good. The Titans, they have, I don't want to say terrible because they do have a good running game. But they have the 2nd worst point differential in the NFL at -12. Or turnover differential in the NFL with -12. Like, that's terrible. That's not good at all. Levis has 10 touchdowns and 10 turnovers. So it seems like they can do things on defense to get stops, but the offense puts them in terrible situations to allow a lot of points, and teams are capitalizing on these turnovers, and they're just not getting any help from the offense with Will Levis. But I will say one silver lining, this guy who has just kind of popped off out of nowhere. Nick Westbrook-Akine has 6 touchdowns in the last 7 games, which is 5th most in the NFL, total touchdowns in receiving, which is crazy because he's only right there behind Terry. Terry's 4th in the league in touchdowns now with 7, but he has 6 the last 7 games. Didn't really do anything the first few games of the season, to be honest with you, but he only has 304 yards, and 117 of those came against the Vikings, where he had a 98-yard touchdown, just a bomb from Will Levis. This is a great throw. I'm going to be honest with you, but he can score touchdowns. But it doesn't seem like they have that receiving threat outside of like Calvin Ridley, who's been great for them as well this season. 41 catches, 634 yards, 3 touchdowns. Y'all know I'm an Alabama fan. Love Ridley. Always been a big Ridley fan. I want him to go somewhere where I thought he would prosper, but he's going to produce anywhere he goes, to be honest with you. And I think he's been great. So, in my idea, just looking at it, how should Washington attack this passing offense? Well, I think you put your best on Calvin Ridley, which as of right now would be Mike Saber still. And then with, we'll just call him NWI because it's a lot easier. Nick Westbrook-Akine. For him, it's crazy because St. Juste had his reps brought back last week, and you saw Michael Davis on the field a lot more, which is crazy. And then, of course, Forbes is inactive like every single week, and then Percy Butler had his snap count reduced as well. So those 2 guys alone are getting brought back. And then you have Noah Igbenogany, who's stepped up as in a big role in the slot a lot of times. He's played outside and in the slot. He's had to move around. You can just tell, and we worked out a ton of corners. You can just tell that Dan Quinn and this coaching staff really wants to get that corner spot solidified. And today, Marshawn Lattimore had his first official practice. I saw some clips. It wasn't like the most intense practice by any means, but he was out there. He was running. He was catching, doing drills and stuff like that. So that means something to me as a Washington fan. And I can't even sit here and say that the defense has been the problem the last few weeks because it hasn't been the defense. To be honest with you, the defense has been great, even with the Eagles game. Great up until the 4th quarter where Saquon Barkley did his thing and just kind of took over. But they were getting pressure on Jalen Hurts. They were causing mistakes on the offense. They were getting stops. Samer still was locking down A.J. Brown, locking down Devontae Smith. And then same thing in the Cowboys game. They had mistakes. They had, bad snaps. They got stops. But the offense has been so stale the last few weeks, they're not getting any help. So I don't know if Marshawn's going to play. I'm really not banking on it. I think this is the week where he practices, he, knocks that rust off, gets into like that game shape. And then after this, like I said, we have that bye week. I think that's where you start to really kind of weave him into the defensive game plan and get him going on those kind of things. But I mean, it's Wednesday. I just don't see, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice. He's just going to like know everything and be ready for Sunday. That's just my opinion. People just seeing reactions to it. People think that he is going to play on Sunday, not like media, but like fans. And I don't see that. I think that debut against the Saints, which would, obviously against his former team, that would be exciting. I would love to see that, but I'm just not banking on him playing Sunday. So looking at like matchups and what I want Washington to do to attack this passing offense, I'm doing it without Marshawn Lattimore, which of course, like I said, I would love to see him out there, but I just don't see that happening. So I would love to see Sainer still on Calvin Ridley running with him because that's our best corner against their best wide receiver. Like that's how it should be. Move him around, just follow Ridley. I think Noah Igbenogany on Westbrook-Akine. I wouldn't want Michael Davis on him. Because he does have that speed and he can get separation. He can, be that deep threat. Like I said, he had that 98-yarder against the Vikings. Outside of that, hasn't really done much. I mean, 200 and some change in all the other games combined with his 6 touchdowns. But I would like Noah Igbenogany to be on him. And then, of course, you're going to need safety help regardless with those 2. We haven't seen it much the last few weeks. Even with CD, he had like 1 big catch when we played the Cowboys last week. But outside of that, we haven't seen those deep touchdown or even just deep plays like we did against the Ravens, like we saw when Jamar Chase got one on us. It's just been spurts throughout the whole season. Defense has played great to a certain extent and then gives up a big play and just kind of erases everything. We haven't seen that the last few weeks. They have gotten better. Even with this puzzle piece or Rubik's Cube, whatever you want to call it, of Dan Quinn and Coach Witt really trying to figure out the secondary, giving more snaps to other guys, taking snaps away from some others. I think they're still trying to figure it out. And obviously when Marshawn gets in there, they're going to be able to have a set lineup that they like, regardless of matchups. Because we heard that we're not playing fours because of the matchups or because of they're going to, run the ball more. We want bigger in there. You're not going to hear that anymore. You're going to have your set guys that you're comfortable with, and that's your full-time secondary. And that's what Washington needs desperately. But guys like Jeremy Chin have stepped up majorly this season. So having a guy like him, having Quan Martin, who's been good too, had some turnovers so far this season, made some plays, has impressed me, honestly, since we've drafted him. I just want to see him in a good defense with good defensive mentorship. And I think that's what we're really getting out of Quan Martin now. Kind of quiet, sneaky, low-key, but he's made some plays so far this season. But you're going to need safety help. I'm not sitting here and saying Will Levis is the deadliest thrower by any means, but he does have a cannon. He can launch it. So you have to really rely on that safety help. And Washington's played a lot of cover 2, played a lot of cover 4 this season. Really since that Baltimore game where we played a lot of cover 1 man in Baltimore just because they run the ball a lot. We've been playing a ton of zone. We've been playing a ton of 2 safety high defense. And I think you're going to get more of that because of the deep threat ability of Calvin Ridley and Westbrook-Ikhine, who's shown that over the last few weeks. You have to defend that. You can't give up big plays in a game like this. I don't want to sit here and be that guy that says this is a must-win game, but you can't drop 4 straight after starting 7-2, after giving yourself this advantage to the playoffs and just dropping another one that you can't just look back at why do you lose to the 3-8 Titans? It doesn't make sense. So a good way to lose a game is to give up these big plays, give up these long touchdowns that the Tennessee's actually been getting over the last few weeks. But do not sleep on them when it comes to Tony Pollard, because Dallas said we are okay with sending or letting him go to Tennessee in free agency. And Pollard's actually been running that rock really well this season. He's the 7th leading rusher in the league with right at 800 yards rushing exactly, which that's just a clean number. I love seeing that. But 800 yards. Tell me, has anyone heard about Tony Pollard so far this season? No. If you'd have asked me how many yards he had, where is he at on, the NFL rushing leaders with guys like Saquon and Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs just really tearing it up this season, I would not have said Tony Pollard was the 7th leading rusher in the league with 800 yards. I definitely wouldn't have, because you haven't heard anything about it. And he's not far behind from being top 5. So I think, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more at the end. I'm going to give you my prediction and everything. But I think matchup wise, Tennessee has some things that they can do really well, because right now Washington has one of still the worst rushing defenses in the league. And it makes no sense to me. Even Rico Dowdle, how do you let these guys run the ball on us? It's been honestly, it's been all season, but over the last few weeks especially. I mean, Rico Dowdle didn't have crazy numbers, but 19 carries for 86 yards. He averaged 4.5 yards per carry. That alone is not okay with me. I can understand Saquon. I can understand, Pittsburgh, who are running back committee. And some of those teams are Derrick Henry and Lamar. I can get it, but we've struggled to stop the run all season. So if you're watching and you're looking at Tony Pollard, you're he's got 800 yards rushing, y'all. Tennessee watched the tape and said, we can run the ball up the middle on these guys. I don't know what it is. And when you go back and watch it, it's just the whole interior D-line penetration just isn't there. The gap integrity by the linebackers in the run game is not there. Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu have been great. I love Bobby Wagner. I love Frankie Louvu. They've both been phenomenal linebackers for us. Probably the best off-the-ball linebacker duo in the NFL. But I will say, when it comes to the running game, one thing that's not getting talked about enough is those guys on the second level aren't really getting the stops up front that you would hope for, except it's after 5 or 6 yards. You can't have that. It seems like Bobby is not getting over the top as fast as you'd want him to, but it also doesn't help that the offensive line is just pushing that interior D line with ease. That's one thing that really just pops off when I'm going back and watching these run games. Like, how are we allowing so many rushing yards per game? How are we giving up 4.5 carries of Rico Dowdle to this Cowboys team that didn't have Zach Martin? I'm just missing pieces on the offensive line. It made no sense to me. And it's still there, and Washington hasn't fixed it. And as much as people wanted to really harp on John Allen, you can say that he did stop the run. Now, like I said, we've been struggling with the run pretty much all season, but Deron Payne needs to step up when it comes to stopping the run and getting to the quarterback. I've been very patient with him and John Allen. Big fans of both of them. Fans have been at their ankles for, honestly, since they both got paid, it seems like. And I think you just have to have that leader on the D-line, the guy, Deron Payne, who's been here for a long time, that got that big contract. Someone like him just needs to step up and look, guys, we got to be better about this and lead by example. Stop the run. And I know he can do it. He's good at stopping the run. And I know he's getting double teamed so much. But you can't just let it happen every single play. You have to do something different. I want to see more stunts, kind of like what the Cowboys did on us. We were doing a lot of chips on the outside. We were doing a lot of, tight end inline chips and just really helping out the edge. But then the Cowboys were sending Micah Parsons on the inside. You saw a lot of these stunts. And that was really one of the first times we've seen that a lot this season. Someone unafraid to bring pressure from the inside on Cosme, on Allegretti, and it worked. It worked. They got pressure on Jaden, and I'm not saying the Titans have the best D-line, but they got some guys on there. So we got to do the same thing. We got to mix it up. We got to throw some stunts in there. We have to stop the run. We have to get more sacks. If you can get to Will Levis, you can win this game. Like I said, he's got 10 total turnovers. I think it's 9 interceptions and 1 fumble. But we've seen the memes that he's already put out this season. Top tier, by the way. But he has those mistakes in him. He has those turnovers in him that he's not afraid to throw these hospital balls. He's not afraid to throw these ill-advised, passes that can get picked off. So you got to get to Will Levis. And I want to say you got to make them run the ball, but even then they might control the clock. That's the worst case for Washington, is if Tennessee just runs the ball, controls the clock on us, like the Steelers did, like the Ravens did. The time of possession was almost exactly the same because they did the exact same thing. They attacked the defense with the run game. They opened up some holes in the passing game, hit some big shots, and controlled the game and won. Kept the offense off the field. But now we're a different Washington team. Our offense has struggled so bad. And then we talk about injuries. Let's talk about that. I don't think the official injury report has come out for today, but let me check. But we did get some updates on a lot of things that worry the heck out of me. Here we go. Official injury report. Austin Eckler with his concussion did not practice. Obviously, scary situation with him getting knocked out. His second concussion. I don't know if he plays again this season. Do you shut him down after 2 concussions in the same season? We'll see. But he's definitely not playing this Sunday. Absolutely not. Zach Ertz had a rest day, did not practice. Clelin Ferrell had a rest day, did not practice. Andrew Wiley, starting right tackle, is in concussion protocol as well. Marshawn Lattimore had a limited practice. Brian Robinson had a limited practice. Allegretti, Dante Fowler, Noah Igbenogany, and Jordan McGee all were full practice, which is good to see. But the thing, going back to it, Austin Seibert on IR, different injury than that right hip. Ended up being a groin injury, is what Dan Quinn was saying at the press conference today. So we're not going to have him. Zane Gonzalez is on the practice squad, so probably going to call him back up with his Chris Cooley 47 jersey, which, of course, fans don't mind after the game against the Cowboys with Seibert missing the extra point and just missing field goals. You can just tell he wasn't 100%, but now he's got another injury. So he might be shut down for the rest of the year. He's on IR. It's at least 4 weeks, but we'll see. But B-Rob and Austin Eckler, in my opinion, that's the biggest one I'm looking at. Like I said, Eckler's not playing in this game. Terrible concussion, absolutely not going to be playing. But Brian Robinson, he has been the talk over the last week. Fans saying it's time to move on. We need to get another running back. And whatever your stance is, I think we need another running back. Whatever your stance is, we can all agree that the offense started to struggle when Washington was stopped being able to run the ball. And it started, like I said, B-Rob banged up in that Ravens game. He played, but he wasn't 100% at all. And we lost that one. Steelers game, he's hurt. We lost that one. Eagles game, he's hurt. We lost that game. Cowboys game, he comes in hurt, gets hurt again. We lost that game. I'm not just saying it's a B-Rob thing, even though he is your leading rusher. I think he helps the offense so much. The running game as a whole helps the offense so much. We were talking about Austin Eckler. I mean, gosh, look how many catches he had against the Eagles, and just look how much of a difference maker he has been so far this season, making big plays when we've had to rely on him. But also Jeremy McNichols, we were talking about him scoring a lot and having big games and big moments. Like, who would have thought? Like, we're talking about third, fourth string running backs. Chris Rodriguez is back. Like, Washington desperately needs to get back to being able to run the ball. And they haven't been able to, mostly because of injuries. So what happened with the game plan? Cliff. A lot of people have been hating on it, saying, oh, this is Cliff's fault. This is why the offense is struggling. It's Cliff. We don't have a run game. We don't have healthy running backs. And people are like, oh, well, why are you calling all these screens? Why are you, all this short game stuff? What's going on? If you can't run the ball, the short game and the screens turns into your running game. Which I hate to say it, but that's what you have to do. You have to be able to run the ball. But if you don't have healthy running backs, are you really going to rely on McNichols and Chris Rodriguez to be your guys that are going to win a game for you? No. But now you're also relying on De'Ami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, Noah Brown to be those guys. Or your running backs in the passing game. We saw, like I said, Austin Eckler having a ton of targets and a ton of catches against the Eagles. That is the main reason why this offense is struggling so much. B-Rob's hurt. Austin Eckler's hurt again. Who's going to run the ball? You have to rely on McNichols, and if you're not being able to run the ball, then you have to find a way for these quick passes, these behind the line of scrimmage passes. And I hate it as much as everybody else. But what do you expect? I'm not ready to sit here and really just tear Cliff apart. And I see the charge like, oh, this happens every year. The second half season slump for Cliff. Look at our roster. Outside of Terry McLaurin, there is not a single defense in the NFL that is scared of Noah Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey. That wide receiver room, if you take Terry away, that's probably the worst wide receiver room in the NFL right now. Just being honest with you. If you took every team's number one option away and then compared, and like Noah Brown, he has good moments. I know he has good moments, and he has it in him. I saw it with the Texans, and I've seen it a couple times this season. But over the last few weeks, drops and just not being able to get open, it just hasn't been there for Noah. So we need him to step up. But I find it so funny that fans are like, why? What happened to the offense? Why isn't this happening? Like, why is Jaden run out of bounds 3 plays in a row on a 3 and out? And like you zoom out and you see the whole play. Nobody is open down the field. Everyone's just like, nobody. The effort, the execution has not been there the last few weeks. And it was more than ever glaring against the Cowboys. So you have to get back to running the ball. But I don't know if B-Rob plays. I just watched, they were talking to him in the locker room, and he was like, oh, it's one of those things. Like, he's going to be another game time decision. First, it was his knee. Then it was his hamstring. And then his ankle got hurt in the Cowboys game. And he got super lucky. I thought his ankle was broken. I was like, man, it's a bad ankle injury for B-Rob. It did not look good. Then he came back in for like a few plays, and then he came right back out. So if he's not playing, guys, Uh, if B-Rob doesn't play, this could be a long game. Jaden's going to have to run the ball. McNichols is going to have to run the ball. And they were trying out like Boston Scott, James Robinson were trying out vet running backs that I forgot were even in the league. So yeah, I am worried about this game to a certain extent because the matchups are there for Tennessee. It could be a bad matchup for Washington because if we can't run the ball, we have to throw it a bunch. And if you forgot what I said in the beginning, they have the best passing defense in the league. Give up the fewest passing yards per game, 169. So if we're not running the ball and we are forcing throws, we're trying to do what we did last week where it's just like, what's going on, guys? Nothing's clicking. No one's catching anything. We're not hitting Terry. It can be a long game. That matchup favors the Titans heavily. And then you look at it the other way. Oh, yeah, by the way, guys, they like to run the ball. Tony Pollard, 800 rushing yards. We can't stop the run. I don't know, guys. Maybe I'm just a little freaked out over this 3-game losing streak. But this is not by any means some 3-8 Titans team that Washington can just roll over anymore. I'm not on that boat anymore. I wish I was. We can't run the ball. That's fine. We got to pass it. They want us to pass it. Even with their injuries. Snead's been hurt. Awuzi's coming back. I think they just activated him. I think he practiced today for the Titans. And then Quandre Diggs has been out. Jarvis Brownlee Jr., I loved him coming out in the draft. Got to see him a lot at the Senior Bowl. He stepped up. He gives up some plays, but he still gets some interceptions. Had one against the Texans. I'm guessing maybe he would be the one that would be on Terry. I don't see Roger McCreary being the guy that's on Terry. Like maybe Jarvis Brownlee is the guy that's on there. But you got to get back to forcing the ball to Terry. I hate being that guy to saying force, but you have to. But what we're seeing a lot of is teams doing blanket coverage on Terry. So you'll have like man coverage and you have someone over the top helping them, or same thing in zone. You're kind of just, you have like match coverage over there and you have some zone help up top, kind of just blanketing Terry, making sure Terry doesn't do what he does. And I talked about this in the post-game stream I did on my YouTube channel about the Cowboys and how often Terry's line up on the left side. And that's the one thing that drives me nuts about Cliff, because he did it with D-Hop too in Arizona. I want to say the numbers it was like 400 and some change snaps that Terry's had as the left wide receiver, and only it was like 35 to 40 on the right side. It was bad. But then you see that long touchdown. Yeah, Terry's on the right side. You have to move Terry around. You have to keep defenses guessing. You can't just say, okay, Terry is going to be on the left side every single play. Defenses know that. They know how to cover it. They're not expecting any pre-snap motion by Terry. If anything, Terry's going to have a drag route to get to the other side, or he's going to have a deep crossing route or a slant, something like that. But other than that, we're not worried about Terry moving around except for like 2, 3, 4 times a game, if that. So, if anything, move Terry around. Get Terry the ball. But I don't know, y'all. This game could be, and like I said, I'm going to be there freezing my tail off with everybody else. This game could be one of those really close, low scoring. Like I said, Vegas had it like 44.5 for the total. Looking at this, I think Washington wins because they do give up so many points. Washington's going to get some turnovers. Washington's going to get 2 turnovers. I'm going to say San Francisco gets an interception, and Louisville forces a fumble. I think we get both of them. Obviously, you get the interception. But I think we recover the fumble. So I think Washington's defense gets 2 turnovers, and I don't want to say the offense is going to come out clicking and look like it did before, but it's got to have a heartbeat. Don't expect the offense to come out and just fireworks and like, oh, the Titans are 3-8. We got this game. The record does not show what they've been doing on defense. Even as banged up as they've been, it has not mattered. Their defense has been great. They have a Will Levis problem. And Will Levis does great things at times. Like I said, he dropped that 98-yard bomb against the Vikings, and I was like, holy smokes, that was impressive. But you gotta force the bad Will Levis to come out. And I think Washington will. I have this one 24. I'm gonna say 24-13. And that seems like a lot of points, but I think those turnovers are going to put us in a good position to at least score, which we haven't been able to do over the last few weeks anyways. But I don't know. I think this one's closer and sneakier. If there was an actual trap game, and I don't want to say it's a trap game because we're on a 3-game lose streak, but the Titans are it matchup-wise. Super sneaky, bad matchups across the board. Not like player-wise, like Terry on Jarvis Brownlee. I'm not worried about that. It's just scheme-wise. Their pass and defense on our team that struggled passing the ball lately. We can't run the ball. We're banged up health-wise, and when it comes to running the ball, and we can't stop the run, and they like to lean on Pollard to get things going on offense with 800 yards rushing on the season. So, doesn't seem ideal, but I think Washington pulls this one back out into the win column. You got to at this point. You can't start the season 7-2 and then drop 4 straight and then really shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to the playoffs. So I appreciate y'all putting up with my on the road setup. I literally have my computer sitting on a box right now. And this is a random cheap microphone that I've had for years. So I apologize. I will be back home next Wednesday, back on the streams in my regular setup. So I appreciate it. And I'll see y'all back here on Bleacher Report, but stay tuned. We got some good things, some post-game reactions as always from our content creators. So if you're at the game Sunday, hit me up and let me know on social media at Josh Taylor FB on everything. And other than that, I'll see y'all next week.